All right. Whoa. Hello. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. My name is Elliot Robia. I'm the co-founder at a local startup called Tinkit, head of product. And today we're going to be talking about how to get a meeting with anyone. So my interest in this subject stems primarily from two places. One, my experiences in startups where I had to get connections with venture capitalists or investors, and then also my experiences in media companies where I had to sell creative services into Fortune 500 companies. So I have, out of necessity, done a lot of reading on this subject. I've tried a whole bunch of things that did not work, tried a few things that did work, and so I'm excited to share a little bit of that learning with you today. And I've also asked my co-founder, Michael, who also has a lot of experience in this area, to join me in co-presenting.
I think that's his way of saying I'm old. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us, and we appreciate it. Elliot, thanks for having me. As Elliot mentioned, not to go through my resume or anything, but I've had a path as it relates to scheduling meetings, mostly with small food companies, startup tech companies, or media companies, and have generally been the underdog trying to get the meeting with the big guys, right? So whether it's a grocery chain, some of the largest mass merchandisers out there in the world, some of the very large media companies or other CPG brands that I've been selling into. So you're going to see some of our collective war wounds today. And we're excited to share with you. It probably wasn't until we started working on Tinkit that I realized all the kind of blunders that we've made over the years and tried a lot of different things. And once we really dug into how scheduling actually works, did it really kind of expose what we're going to share with you, and you'll probably see yourselves in a lot of the challenges that we faced. So Tinkit is a startup, and our whole mission is trying to make scheduling easy. And if we have time at the end, we'll go into that a little bit. So what we're going to cover today is some common approaches that Elliot's going to take you through, and then and why a lot of those don't work, and kind of lift up some of the things and some of the lessons that we've learned, and we'll go into a little bit of the kind of scheduling dynamics in there too, and then we'll finish it off with why everyone's here, which is how to get a meeting with anyone, and how do we turn kind of those challenges into positives, and we'll bring it home that way. All right?
All right, so we'll start from the top. We'll start with a few common approaches that people use to try to get meetings. I've tried a bunch of these. I know Michael has. And we'll start maybe with what we call the thoughtful novel. So this is approach number one. The thoughtful novel is characterized by by an email that's typically about this long, and it takes about 15 scrolls of the thumb to get from the top to the bottom on your phone. And the author of this piece has typically meticulously crafted this thing. It's taken them, a minimum of 45 minutes to get through it. They have literally answered every question that you could conceivably have. If they're offering a product, they've got a nice list of features along with descriptions of the features. If it's a service that they're offering, they have a laundry list of capabilities, maybe referencing a few clients just to add a little bit of credibility. So yeah, they've literally thought of everything. And if you read it, you will find that that is true. But of course, you won't, because it's too long. So approach two is the...
Hold on a second. Has anybody ever written a thoughtful novel?
I have.
Yeah. I have.
Exactly. Yeah. So approach two is what we call the Mad Libs BS. And this is a nice email template, right, that has been customized just for you. And if you open it, you'll find that the emails typically start with something like this. Hi, Elliot. I hope you are well. I was surfing through your website, www.tinkit.com, and noticed that the keywords in your pages are not resulting in top placement on Google or Bing searches. My firm, Spring Marketing, is a national leader in search engine optimization. We provide yada, 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 yada. I need not say more. These get deleted. Approach three is the personal solicitation. Now, these emails actually are personal. So they often are very complimentary. They were directed right to you. And they'll begin with something like this. Hi, Michael. I see on LinkedIn that you're the chief marketing officer at Tinkit. Guy did his homework. I was looking through your product overview page, and I have to say, I love the brand field you've established for your product. It's friendly, approachable, and yada, yada, yada. So thoughtful analysis. And then the author will proceed to introduce his or herself, to provide the list of relevant capabilities, a description of how their firm can help your company, and then offer an invitation to get together for coffee or lunch next week or do a phone call. And these emails are really, really nice. The person put time into them, they did their research, they targeted it just for you. But the problem is that Michael gets 100 emails a week like this. And everybody else who's in Fortune 500s, investors, VCs, they get a lot of emails like this, and they can't possibly respond to all of them.
Anyone sent one of these?
I've sent hundreds of these. They really don't work. You've got to find another way, and we'll get to that. Approach number 4 is what Michael has coined as the turd toss. So believe it or not, almost everybody in this room has probably done a turd toss. I've done it myself. So in a turd toss scenario, typically we're trying to get a meeting with somebody who's really, really busy. And so we will make a nice gesture, something along the lines of, we'll write our email, we'll end it with, let me know, a time that works for you in the next couple weeks. We're being very considerate. We're being very flexible. I think I've been the nicest guy in the world because I have said, let me know a time that works for you in the next couple weeks. I mean, surely there's got to be a time in the next couple weeks that works for you. But inadvertently, what we've actually done is created work for the other person. And Michael will get into this a little bit further right now.
I've tossed a lot of turds, I'll admit. Anybody else? So when we look at these, why don't they work? And it's really 3 kind of key reasons. It's about being relevant, being compelling, and then being easy to respond to, right? I mean, it's being recipient friendly. So the first one, not relevant. So some of the examples that Elliot gave, like the SEO one, like surely as a CMO, I need SEO. But it may not be relevant because it might not be on my radar now. I might be very well taken care of in that area. And so it really hasn't really hit home. There's nothing about what they're reaching out to where they haven't done their homework. Even though they offer it, that doesn't mean that's what I need. And so finding ways, and Elliot will cover this a little later, of being relevant to that audience and making sure that you are doing that homework ahead of time. Not compelling. So busy people have 7 seconds maybe to respond and to digest what you're reading. So the thoughtful novel gets kicked out pretty quickly. Anything longer or that goes below the fold is probably a problem. But a lot of times the offering is not it's not compelling. There are challenges with not just relevance, but why will that person pay attention to it? And then finally, not easy to respond to. This, I have mired in this for years, right? Again, back to the turd toss and some of the things, I'm really cognizant of the formatting, right? But I'll write a long email, and I think I've covered everything, asked for the meeting and everything, but it has to be easy to respond to. But all of those examples that Elliot gave, it's not easy. They're too long, which kicks it out. It's not clear what the message is. It's too much work, right? You haven't given me the tools that I need as a recipient to respond quickly. And there's 3 other factors that really come into play here that make getting meetings even more difficult. The first one is social norms are really against you. So when I started in my career, to get meetings, we picked up the phone. Right? We just picked up and dialed, right? Today, calling somebody out of the blue is kind of rude, right? It's like you prearrange it through a text or an email. It's like, hey, are you available? Can we talk, right? So it's considered rude to actually just pick up the phone and call somebody. The other thing is that we've got these smartphones, right? And everybody is on a smartphone. So I really can't operate when I want to for scheduling meetings and trying to get a meeting. I can't do things on the go in the moment as easily as I would like to. Recipient needs are super complex, right? So as you're thinking about scheduling, I'm going to go to my list here because there's a number of them. But things like power dynamic, right? So almost every meeting is a power dynamic. If Elliot is a client of mine, he probably holds more of the power. So I'm probably going to go towards him to make that meeting happen, accommodate him. If Elliot is my intern and I want to get a meeting, I know that he'll probably come to me on my terms, right? There's things like, what do I believe the other person's likely availability is? How busy are they, right? Do I think I can get a meeting in the next 2 days, next 2 weeks, next 2 months? So a lot of these things are swirling around in my head. How about setting and location, right? Where am I going to meet this person? Near me, near them, maybe somewhere in between? I got to find a place. I got to go look and figure out where's their office. Okay, they're at Best Buy. Am I going to meet them at their office, at the Caribou in their office? Is it at a restaurant, or where is it? So there's a lot of things to really consider when it comes to that recipient needs. Finding times and locations is hard. When you're trying to propose potentially mutual and beneficial times and locations, there's a lot going on. We've got, it takes a high degree of skill, a high degree of focus, and includes a fair amount of executive function, planning, reasoning, decision-making, right, to be able to do that. And it gets compounded when I'm trying to do it on my mobile phone because I don't have my email and my calendar next to each other, and I end up toggling back and forth, right? I'm trying to hold times that I'm looking at spatially in a calendar, transpose those into numbers, characters, it's wed, colon, March 8th, @ number, you've done it all, you've all tried to do it. And so it's very hard for us sort of as humans to construct a really good request from the other person, partly because of the tools, partly because there's just so many decisions and things that you have to think about, and partly because, that coordination of times. And so we resorted to the scenarios that Elliot went through before because they're easier for us as senders to request that meeting. I can template it, right? And I can just insert that template and get a whole bunch of them out, right? Or I can toss a turd all day, right? Because that's easy for me, but it isn't always received that way, and that's why we're struggling with it.
All right, so we've addressed, given some examples of approaches that don't work. Michael has kind of gone through specifically to kind of explain why these don't work. So obviously we're left with, what does work. And I think that, for anybody who's trying to consistently get high-value meetings with people that are hard to reach, it really starts with a recognition that it is all about the long play. So you need to resist the urge to ask for too much too fast. The goal is not to get the big yes today. You're not trying to get the sale. You're not asking for the job. You're not, trying to arrange the strategic partnership. What you want to do is get a small yes, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a second here. But
particularly when it's a cold, right?
Exactly.
You don't know the other person, right?
Yes, this pertains to the cold approach. When you don't know the other person, what you're trying to do is ask for something small, and we'll get to this. You're trying to get an opportunity to introduce yourself, to get some FaceTime or get onto the phone, to make a positive first impression, and then to lay the groundwork for the future when eventually you will ask for the big yes. So with that in mind, let's go through and address each of the three reasons that Michael just laid out for for how we can get these meetings: how to be relevant, how to be compelling, and how to be easy to respond to. We'll start with how to be relevant. So, if possible, get introduced through a strong connection. Introductions are by far the most effective way to get a meeting. They're probably, this isn't a scientific number, but they're probably 100 times more effective than a cold email. I would say a huge amount of the meetings that I've gotten with hard to reach people have come through personal introductions.
We've got some better tools than we've ever had
To do that, to figure that out.
in, our networking events and things, and find a way to get to that person and get a referral.
Exactly, yep. And what you can do if you aren't able to get the personal introduction is to find a way to reference a shared contact. And so usually the way that this works is you say, all right, I'm going to be meeting with my friend Brett next week, or this acquaintance Brett next week. And I know that Brett is connected to Michael. So what I'll do is I'll come into that meeting with Brett, we'll have our conversation, and at the end I'll say to something along the lines of, Brett, do you by chance know Michael Siegel? And he'll say yes, and I'll say, oh, I thought that might be the case. I saw you're connected on LinkedIn. You both used to work at General Mills. I want to, I was just wondering, do you think Michael might be interested in what we're doing with Tinket? Do you think he might be interested in checking it out? And Brett will go, yeah, I think he would. I'd say, all right, well, we're getting ready to go out and raise some money in March. I have this pitch deck I've been putting together. Do you think he might be able to give some feedback or some thoughts or perspectives on the message we're going out with? And Brett would say, yeah, I could see that. And I'd say, awesome. All right, well, I'll plan to just reach out to him then after this. And he'd say, all right, cool. So then what I do is I turn that over, I go over to Michael and I shoot him an email. I don't know Brett well enough to say, can you give me an introduction? I maybe have only met Brett once. So what I say to Michael then is, hi, Michael. I was directed to you by Brett Hummel. Ding, ding, ding. He knows Brett, right? And I say, my startup Tinket, we're getting ready to go out and raise money in March, and Brett thought you might be able to provide some feedback on the story we're planning to go out with. And I continue the conversation. I am suddenly probably 50x more likely to get that meeting just by doing that. So if you can't ask for the introduction directly, find a way to bounce off of a shared contact and reference them. By the way, you shouldn't make it up. If they didn't actually direct you to that person, that's lying. You don't want to do that. And then lastly, if you can, play the affinity card. So if you went to the same college or grad school as the person, mention that right up off the top. Hi, Michael, I'm a 2010 grad at St. Olaf, blah, 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 blah. He fills in the blank. Exactly. Or if you've done work with the same nonprofit, there's no shame in playing that card. Just reference that fact and affinity is created, right? Any sort of shared group that you're in together, any sort of shared experience you can reference ups the likelihood. And I've used that a lot of times with cold emails, cold approaches where I had no other way to get to them. So I think the common theme here is that whenever you are approaching somebody that you have never met before, you are starting cold. And so what you have to do is figure out a way to make the cold warm. And as you look at these approaches, you might be thinking, well, it kind of seems like you gotta know somebody who knows somebody, or you gotta get involved. And unfortunately, that actually is true. That's how it works. And so if you don't have a strong network now, if you're not involved in a lot of community stuff or whatever, totally fine, but you should start today so that a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, you can start getting more and more of these high-value meetings with hard to reach people. You're going to be glad you started now. Secondly, we want to think a little bit about how to be compelling. So it all starts with offering something that the other person wants. You need to have something that's valuable to them. So for somebody approaching Michael out of the blue with an offering that has absolutely no value to him, it's going to fall flat, right? It's going to fall on deaf ears. So that's sort of table stakes. And then next, hopefully, you have something that's not only valuable, but it's unique. It's differentiated. I, in my own experience, have, working in creative services businesses, have found at times it to be difficult to get meetings. And the reason is that, I'll start with I'll shoot an email, I'll go through the, very simple capabilities, I'll do everything right. I'll reference, some sort of shared experience that we've had, but, and then I'll explain how my firm can add value to that business. And I'll then make an invitation, let's get together for coffee or lunch. The problem, though, is that even though my firm probably can help that person's company, I am one of 15 companies in town that is emailing this person, offering the same set of services. And so, you start with something valuable, that's table stakes, but if at all possible, offer something unique. And what I found in my own experience, because I did not have something differentiated and unique, I needed to then offer something else. So a couple examples. When I was when I was in these creative services businesses, we had basically two sets of clients. We had either other production companies that would leverage services that we offered, or we worked with agency clients, and then we worked with corporate partners. So for the agency or production companies, I got involved with a local film festival, started, becoming one of the organizers of that, and used that to ask people at the agencies, ask people at the production companies, would you be interested in being a judge in this festival? I'm not asking them to buy my creative services. Well, yeah, I'm interested in that. That sounds fun. I might get to meet some new people. I'd have an opportunity to, when I'm on the speaking panel, share some of my expertise in this subject with others. And so through that, I was able to meet with them several times, leading up to the festival and get to know them a little bit. And similarly, on the corporate side, I joined the Minnesota American Marketing Association, just raised my hand as a volunteer, started doing whatever to begin with, and then eventually moved into more of a speaker outreach role and was able to use that to say, hey, Director of Marketing, VP of Marketing, CMO at a Fortune 500, we're doing an event in March. We have a big, our annual conference is coming up this summer. Would you be interested in doing a keynote? Would you be interested in presenting? Yeah, I could do that. I'm not selling anything, right? I'm making a smaller ask, something they're actually interested in. They want to participate in the community that they're a part of. And so then I can get the meeting. I can exchange emails with them. I've opened up a line of communication. I've given myself a way to establish a relationship, create a positive first impression, and then I'm laying the groundwork so that a year later I can circle back around and say, hey, Joe, now we're on a first name basis. I'd love to come by at some point and do, with my team and do a little capabilities presentation for you guys. I get those meetings then, and we can get business through it. So if
sometimes comes down to trying to play off of the other person's ego, right? Because we all love when people recognize our capabilities or our skill or our affiliations or something and come in with a small ask that makes us feel good, right? So if someone says, Michael, would you be a mentor for XYZ group? I'd be thanks for recognizing. I could give back. I can do that. I'm not saying I know I'm buying whatever they're selling, but it is a relationship game, and it's being really understanding of what that other person would like to do, and how can I make it a genuine ask, right? I'm not making it up. Like they didn't come to me because they thought I'd be a bad mentor.
right.
And so,
Yeah.
so it's an opportunity to really, what is it in that person's position that would be a small ask that I could go out for, that would, maybe be a little bit of a stroke of their ego, which is more likely to get a yes, at least for that small.
Right. Yeah, and it's a really good point. And it's a combination of, there's a little bit of I feel good that I've been asked, recognized for this, but it has to be, correspond with, I'm actually intrinsically interested in this thing too. Like Michael is a great mentor. He is always meeting with young people. If that weren't true of him, it wouldn't work. Or similarly, that marketing director, there's something in them also is a teacher. They want to share what they've learned with other people. They want to participate in the community that they're a part of. So there's several dynamics at play. So bottom line, you have to have something valuable to offer. If you don't, you might be in the wrong business. Secondly, look for a way to make it unique, and if you can't, get a little bit creative. So then thirdly, you've got to be easy to respond to. So you have to keep it short, and we'll look at this in just a minute here. And although you don't want to ask for something too big, you don't want to ask for the job, the sale, the strategic partnership, you do have to ask for something small. And this could be something like feedback on a project you're working on. It could be help in solving a problem that you're facing in your business. It could be advice on some decision you need to make professionally in your career. It can't be BS. You don't want to just manufacture this. But if you have a real thing that you're struggling with and you leverage that as a way to get in touch with some of these people, it has to be relevant to them.
Know that they're looking for SEO, that might be your foot in the door. I know that it's relevant. I know what I do is compelling and differentiated from everybody else. And now I'm going to go right in and ask for something short and say, you need to at least put this on the table when you're considering SEO. Right? Something they can easily say yes. There's no commitment. It's just I need 15 minutes, and then you can decide where we go from there. Something small, short commitment. Maybe it starts with a phone call. It's not a meeting. right? Because we're over meeting, so something that they can say yes to.
Exactly. And if it is more personal, if it's feedback, if it's help solving the problem, if it's advice, this works. There's a lot of psych research that supports that when you get people to say yes to small things, they're significantly more likely down the line to say yes to bigger and bigger things. So again, it can't be BS, it's got to be authentic, but I do this a lot and it totally works. And then, thirdly, you want to provide a clear call to action. So what I do in all of my outbound emails is close with a very simple question, that requires a binary yes/no. So it's something like, would you be available, next week to get coffee, or a conversation, or a call? And we'll talk more about this in a second here. So, with all your requests, you need to be aware of the fact that your email is a user interface. So you need to design this thing in a way that's easy to interact with. On the left side, the request that we have here is a thoughtful novel, right? It's completely overwhelming. There's no affordance. I have no idea where to start. And conversely, there over on the right side, I've got the exact same request. I'm asking for the same thing, but it's short, it's simple, it's easy. The line breaks are designed in a way that my eye goes to key moments, key places in the message. So there are 4 key things that you want the user to very quickly digest in your email message when they quickly scan it, because they're busy, right? They're in meetings all day. And what those 4 are first of all, a subject. I do 1 of 2 things in my subject lines. I either elevate my call to action, coffee next week, ? Or what I'll do is elevate my purpose, quick feedback, ? I always put into the subject a question mark at the end because it makes it clear to the other person that action's required. I need a response, right? I'm asking a question. And then I transition from that into a relevant greeting. Hi, Paul. I was directed to you by Andrew Nussbaum. Ding, ding, ding. I've made the cold warm. Then I transition into the purpose. My startup, Tinkit, is going out to raise angel capital on March 1st, and Andrew suggested I connect with you to get your thoughts on our pitch. I want to make sure that the story is compelling, and I'd appreciate your perspective. Line break, are you available for coffee next week? You'll see at each of these points, I want their eye to see, I was directed to you, my startup Tinkit, and are you available next week? And of course the subject line. So 4 things I want them to see very quickly while they're scanning. Did you have a question? Exactly. 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 They don't need the laundry list of everything Tinkit does and every problem in the world that we're going to solve for people. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I would
Now,
argue that what Elliot's done here is actually, he's done a lot of things really well. He's created a little bit of making the cold warm, right? He stated his purpose, but then at the end, he kind of tossed the turkey.
we have an ongoing debate on what the call to action should be, and I'll let Michael take it from here. On the cold email.
On the cold.
On the cold.
Right. So the cold email, it's sort of a judgment call. And I spent the majority of my career like this, thoughtful, actually not quite as well structured, probably more of a novel. But the question is, how will the other person perceive getting times or not, right? So is it presumptive of me to send them times if I don't know them, right? So I don't know Trent sitting right here. We just met. We're going to try to get together. He's a big CEO, and I'm trying to get a meeting with him. Is it presumptive of me to send him times to get together when we just met? Or maybe we didn't even meet. Someone referred me to Trent. I don't know him. I'm going to reach out, get an affinity going, and say, hey, here are times. When can you meet? You know, how does that come off? So we have an ongoing debate about how this plays out. And maybe it's because I just turned 50 and my, give a shit is kind of low these days, where my philosophy is send times, almost always. And what that's done, and so I've done this. So in the last, let's just say, before Tinkit, I've sent thousands of meeting requests over email, doing a lot of them wrong. And since Tinkit, hundreds-ish in email, because Tinkit's not ready. And what I've found are a couple of things when I include times, whether I know them or not, really, and this is why there's a little bit of a debate, is when I send times, I feel that I've actually been more respectful of the other person's time, right, versus some sort of vague overture, right? You know, could you get together in the next couple of weeks, right? Because I feel like that's going to create a couple laps back and forth no matter what. So I experimented with this. I sent dozens of, we built a prototype last August just to see conceptually would this thing work. The prototype allowed me to go in and send somebody 3 times that were specific. And I just wanted to see, and it would transpose into an email, and they get an email and they click and see the times. And I was just wondering if I could actually get a meeting, right? Or I'd stick 3 specific times in an email even, right? And just send them. And I was blown away. I'd say my batting average without specific times, I would say, how about Wednesday afternoon, right? I'm sure we've all done this, right? Next week, or what Elliot was doing, which is why it's a debate. But what I found is when I put times in, and there's some, we'll get into the kind of the best practices there. When I put 3 specific times in, my batting average went from 20% response to the email at all, whether I got the meeting or they just replied, to over 80%. And by far, probably 90% of those responses confirmed one of the 3. And I'm like, bing, right, big learning.
For cold emails?
For cold or warm. If I made the cold warm, so you know, I was in the process, right? So it wasn't maybe completely cold, but here's what it does. So when what it was really amazing is the number of times people responded at all. So if I did the very well crafted email, I think I'm being as short as I can be. Hey, it's time to do some planning. We need to get together with a client, right? How does the week after next look for you? You know, let me know, you know, we've got to get together, right? And this is somebody I know, I've worked with, right? A client. And I'd literally get crickets. No response. So I tried another way. 3 specific times, shorter message, and then at the end I'd say, if these don't work, propose some others in an email. And literally, whether I got the meeting or not, I got an immediate response to my email. I did this probably a year ago with 2 different brand managers at a company I was working with. And in 30 minutes, I had bang, bang, instead of nothing. And in that case, I got 2 meetings. In other cases, I get at least just a response to when, you know, we should get together or whatever the subject was.
But to your question, that is the source of the debate inside Tinker. My philosophy is give them a binary yes, no. Will you take this meeting? I don't phrase it like that, obviously, but that's essentially what I'm asking. Michael takes it a step further in the cold email and actually puts the times in. So we encourage you guys to try it both ways and see what you think. Yeah.
When the question is more open-ended, like the previous email, isn't it better for the recipient because it gets any time of the week?
Well, that's the task of very philosophy. So I think it's better because all they have to say is yes, send, and then I'll do the work for them. Michael's philosophy is give them a little UI, let them pick A, B, or C, and that might be better.
Well, what I'm trying to do, right, is the reason that I feel strongly isn't just because I've had some good experience, but I want to compel them to respond, right? So I already don't have the meeting. So my risk, I feel, is fairly low. If they say no, I never had it to begin with, right? So why not? If I can make it easier for them, because what's going on right now is if I send them Wednesday afternoon, that's more work, and I got to think about my Wednesday afternoon. If I send 3 specific times, I've got a specific yes/no binary decision to make on those 3. It's just which one's going to work better.
Specific duration?
Yes, I typically do. Usually in the note, I'll put, yeah, I need 15 minutes for a quick call, or, and a lot, you know, I think the default for most of us is an hour. So depending on if we've had this kind of meeting in the past and there's already a known duration. But yeah, it's a great point.
If it's short, it's nice to point out. If all you need is 15 minutes or 20 minutes, it makes it apparent that you're asking for something that's cheap.
Pushing into the first one and the ahead of time, sometimes you're expecting a simple yes, but the expectation is that the recipient is not going to have to do any work. So at the times they think that, oh, I'll have to send 3 times 10 problems, I don't have to do that calendar work. So in saying, just send back a yes and I'll share the times that work, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, did anyone hear that? Sort of. Yeah. Yeah, so Allie said that if what you could do is to try to alleviate the work from the other side is say, hey, are you available for coffee next week? If so, I'll send some times that might work, right? So it's a combination of the two where you're gonna do the work for them. I like it. It's a good approach. Yeah.
One thing I learned, I just shared through, especially on this email here, is just to ask for a meeting, not to ask for coffee, because some people don't care about coffee.
Right.
And a lot of people do with coffee, like
Yes.
or be in a coffee shop, or by your office. It's even worse on lunch, is asking for people.
Oh,
So
lunch
it's
is
just on
your
your
lunch is out.
Lunch is a big commitment,
Yeah.
right?
Are you available for a 15-minute meeting?
If I want to keep it, easier, I'll say a conversation, free for a conversation. Or if I want it to sound cheap, I say a call. If I'm okay with a call. But a lot of times I want to get FaceTime so that that impression can get there. It's a lot easier. You can make the impression in person. You're emotionally triggering things in their head.
Well, and sometimes you're trying to guilt the other person, right? You say, hey, I'm going to be right by your office. Could we grab, 5 minutes or something? Can I meet you in the lobby or whatever? Just, oh, I happen to be by, right?
I'll be right by your office every day next week. 9 to 5.
So what we've learned are some kind of best practices around how do you propose times and locations. So number one is multiple specific times. So not just, how does Thursday look? How does Thursday afternoon look, right? But Thursday at 3 o'clock, Friday at 9 a.m., right? And typically, different days, different day parts, and if possible, different weeks. But going back to the recipient needs, if I need this meeting now, I'm not going to have the luxury of spanning them and spacing them out. But if I really want to get a meeting, what I want to do is, if today's Saturday, I'm going to propose a meeting to Elliot for the later in the week, this coming week, maybe Thursday, maybe morning. I'm going to go into the following week and propose 2 times, but not all morning, right? And not all Thursdays, right? So if he has a staff meeting at 8 a.m. on Thursday and I just proposed it, it's gone, right? So I haven't helped him there. But if I have other options, so it's Thursday at 8 a.m., it's Monday at 3 p.m., and then maybe a midday option. So over different days, day parts, and weeks. Because I'm just trying to improve my odds, right? That's all I'm trying to do is space them out to where I think, and it depends obviously on what you know about that other person, right? If they jog every morning at 7, I'm not going to propose a 7 a.m. coffee. I have to learn that about them, but there are plenty of people we're trying to meet with that we know a lot of their behaviors to inform us.
By the way, when it comes to getting meetings with people that you think probably will say yes, but they're really busy, it's a client. It's a valuable relationship. It's a client. Michael and I, everyone at Tinket, we're in 100% agreement. This is the approach you should take. So the question is the cold approach, but for the more warm approach, do this.
And location and setting, I would say, are are things that, where is this meeting going to take place? And thinking about that ahead of time. Can I schedule it near me? Should it be near them? Or is it somewhere in between? And if it's somewhere in between, or maybe near me or near them, what's the setting? Coffee, meeting, call?
Questions on here regarding the location. Do you find it better to be, say, an indoor location? Say I'm responsible for the location, or if they're busy or whatever, just saying, can I do the indoor location? Which one of those two would work? Usually the one I do, because that's extra time to travel.
Right. I mean, it does depend, right? Because if they're going to be more willing to take the meeting at their own office, that has a bearing. If it's neutral, because there's a power dynamic that I want to neutralize, because if I'm in my office and my desk, I hold the power. Even if it's in my conference room, my building, the restaurant in my building, I have familiarity and comfort there versus the other person. So if I'm trying to make it more neutral, I might propose a place near their office. It's not that big of a lift to get there. And if I've made it relevant and compelling ahead of time and feel like I have a good shot at getting that, then that's a good practice. I mean, depends, there isn't one size fits all, but it's a great point.
If it's a big company and there's a very, very convenient for the other person neutral location, like let's say the Caribou, meeting with somebody at Best Buy, you could propose the Caribou on the first floor. That is nice for the other person because they can just walk downstairs, but they also feel like they can get away. Like if they need it at the end of the meeting, if they don't know what you're like, if you're like trying to ride them for some like specific big yes, if you're in their office, they can't like literally push you out of the room and call security. So what they're gonna want to do is be able to just say, hey, I got another meeting I gotta run to. I gotta run a really nice meeting. That's kind of a nice option sometimes.
And then what I always do is if I'm proposing times, I want to give the other person options. Propose others, right? So I almost always say, hey, if these don't work, please propose some others, plural, because I want them to propose multiple ones back to me. And sometimes I'll even add, and I'll make one work, right? So I'm going to accommodate you, but I need you to, evaluate those times. But if they don't work, just toss me some back, right? So I'm giving a clear call to action of what I want them to do if those don't work, and that does happen. Some people will go, so I'm trying to, sort of conflate the do I want to meet with Elliot into when am I going to meet with Elliot, right? And I'm doing that intentionally by putting times in versus not.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. If you take nothing else from this, we'd like to just remind you to always be relevant, be compelling, and be easy to respond to. A couple of nice tools that I love. If you need an email address, check out CellHack. It's a Chrome extension. You put the person's name in, first name, last name. You put in their domain, tinkit.com, and then this service has a whole bunch of algorithms. One of them is a technique they have where their server pings the other person's email server, and it says, does this email address exist? Does this email address exist? Does eRobia exist? Is it Elliot.robia? Is it Elliot at? And so it comes back to you and says with 75 or 99% confidence, this is Elliot's email. ToutApp is an awesome tool if you want to track opens or clicks. The reason I really like this tool is because I can send all of my emails out of this really awesome optimized web interface. It integrates with my email server, so the emails actually come from my SMTP server. They're not coming from Tout. And then thirdly, I can do all my opens and click tracking, and they don't make me put some unsubscribe garbage in the bottom. The tool is supposed to be for personal emails. It's not for mass marketing, so you don't have to put all the unsubscribe stuff in there. And then lastly, if you are interested in learning more about Tinkit, we have a tool that's going to make scheduling wicked, easy, and fast. We're going to be doing a private beta, a couple of pilots over the next couple of months, and then a private beta following that. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email, elliot@tinkit.com, Tinket, and then just put the words beta in the subject line, and I'll know what it's for, obviously. And we've got maybe 6 minutes. We'll take a couple quick questions, and then I'd love for Michael to maybe show you what Tinkit looks like. Yeah.
If you have a single approach to saying, if they don't respond at all, what's your experience with follow-up? Another one?
Yeah, what I do is send it a week later. Not sooner than a week later for the follow-up, and I always reply to my initial so that they see what I'm referencing, and they can see my original email. I wait 1 week because if I do it sooner than that, it feels like, dude, you just emailed me. If I wait, but usually in a setting where you're trying to meet with someone who's hard to get a hold of, they're busy, a week feels like enough time where they're like, oh yeah, I forgot to get back to that. So I found that to be the right number, 7 days.
Remember, if you sent them times, keep track of what you sent them, because if their times are stale now, and you're following up too fast, you want to be just cognizant of where that line is.
When do you stop following up?
Try to not annoy the person. Remember, you're focusing on the long play. So it's like, I don't need this meeting right now. I want to meet this person. I'm going to freaking figure out a way. but I'm not going to annoy them because then I'm like poisoning the well, right? So you want to make sure you're.
A regroup strategy.
Yep.
Right? Put out the first volley, nothing. One follow-up, nothing. Regroup and figure out how I'm going to get this over.
Find another angle. Yep, exactly. And that does work. After the first follow-up, then it's like, all right, what's the affinity card? How do I start getting involved with that organization? Then I'll come back around and ask them to speak at my event or whatever it is. Yeah.
So you talk a lot about sending emails, but have you tried this approach with like LinkedIn? Have you done any experiments with
With LinkedIn. LinkedIn can work. I never use it, not because I don't want to pay for the subscription, but that's true too. I mostly think that that's not the channel people expect personal email to come through. Whenever I get an in-mail, I usually think recruiter, salesperson. So what I want to do is do a little bit of legwork, figure out their email address through SellHack or some other means. Maybe it's on a press release, maybe it's on their LinkedIn account, however I get it, and then I hit an email. They're looking at their email every day. Michael, we've got maybe 3.5 minutes. Why don't you we just want to show you what Ticket looks like, just so you can get a little pre-taste of how this thing works.
So we're trying to take all this learning, right? We're trying to take all this learning and putting it into an app that's really optimized for scheduling, right? That takes into account the recipient needs, the speed, right? Privacy concerns of people. Like I don't want to expose my whole calendar to people and let them, we were talking about that earlier about, then they can pick a time that works off of it. So let me go here.
One distinction we'd like to make right off the top is, if you ever consider the difference between scheduling and calendar, and there actually is a difference. So Microsoft will dominate the calendar experience. There's a couple of little other tools like Fantastic that make calendar easy. We are addressing scheduling. Scheduling is something you have to do with the person. It's the back and forth communication. You're trying to coordinate a time and place. After you schedule, then you calendar. And we're not touching calendar.
So real quick, because we don't have a lot of time, I'll go through how you'd propose a meeting in Ticket and how we're trying to help the user step by step through the process. So it's very easy. It's obviously about scheduling because it says who do you want to meet with, and you click the Meet button, and this will be a list of the people you meet with most often. Right? So it's not an alphabetical list. It'll learn from your behavior. So if you have a team that you're meeting with and someone has a Z last name, you don't want to go and search, or scroll down, alphabetically to find them. So we'll populate that. So I'll schedule a meeting.
Pull contacts not only off of your phone, not only out of your contacts, anybody you have ever emailed. So if somebody sends you an email one time, you'll notice if you start replying, they're auto-populated. We scrape all those contacts, whether you're a Microsoft user, Google user, etc. So you can email or you can take it with anything.
It'll also give you smart suggestions. So if I pick Alice here, it's going to dynamically tumble the people to see who else Alice and me might be associated with, and suggest groups that we're associated with, so I can go faster. After that, then I'm in my locations, right? And so this will be my frequent locations. Right now we don't have it hooked up, but my office will show up here, my frequent places, and it will be also paired with the other person. So if Ellie and I meet here, next time I pick Elliot, it's going to suggest here, and so on. And then if I need to explore and go into another area and see what's around there, I can go to the map, hit a filter on location, find a coffee shop near me. Right. And then once I pick one, now I'm in my calendar. So I've given Ticket permission to my calendar. I can scroll and find time. I can see what else I have in context, right? So I can say, okay, I can do this time. And then it's going to continue to suggest times to me that it thinks, and it'll get better as we go. So I'm going to add some times here. So all of these work, and I might go, that Wednesday at 7:30, depending on the power dynamic, is going to work best for me, so I can prefer it. Signaling to the other person. So these are time options and location option I'm sending to the other party. And I might say, I'm gonna add a note. So I can add a note, I can edit the note and save it as my new template. And we're trying to put a nice note that it's just really simple. So we actually think that the note holds us back a lot, right? It's hard to construct the note. It takes a lot of thinking about it. So if I can just make it really simple and send a ticket to someone, it's like, oh, they want to get together. Well, we're gonna get together and talk. That's what, and then I send it. And then once I send it, it goes into what we call, I'll go back here, into our message thread. And now this is our meeting-related messages. So I've sent Alice, you can see I've been trying to schedule a lot of meetings with Alice, and it's in a message thread. And then if Alice has Tinkit, she'll be in this thread as well. She'll get the 3 times. She'll be able to look in calendar context just like we showed, and she'll be able to thumbs up on it, and then it's done. It's on both of our calendars. If she doesn't have Tinkit, she'll get an email with a link. It'll open a browser those 3 times. She'll still have to toggle to her calendar. She'll pick one, then we'll send her a calendar invite automatically. So just trying to make it fast.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah, sorry, we have to be done, but we'll wait outside the door if you have other questions.
Yeah, thank you so much.